Order in the court. The judge's gavel came down with a resounding crash, ringing out through the courtroom. But nothing could muffle the thick tension hanging in the air. This was no ordinary hearing. It was the fiery finale of a year-long reality television drama marked by heartbreak, betrayal, and secrets. Sister Wives fans had watched every dramatic second of the Brown family's life, but they could not have been ready for what was in store inside these walls. Standing at the center of the tempest was Mary Brown, Cody Brown's first wife, now his strongest enemy. But today, Mary was more than just that familiar face on televisions. She walked into the room a new person. Gone was the demure woman that many had underestimated. Instead, she stood firm and commanding, wearing a crisp navy suit, hair styled back, holding a thick folder of documents. In her eyes, there was a fire, a resolve to take back what belonged to her. Opposite her sat Cody, with Robin beside him. Far from the strong leader he was in the past, Cody appeared shrunken, lost. Robin's hold on his hand so tight that her knuckles were white, her eyes frantically scanning the courtroom, anticipating the storm that was about to rage. The Brown patriarch, once invincible, now seemed helpless, his hold on control slowly ebbing away. This was the day Mary Brown reclaimed her power, the day which caused shockwaves throughout the entire Brown family. For weeks, as cameras scanned Christine and Janelle's stealthy departures, Mary labored in secret. She constructed a case with nowhere to hide for Cody's defense. At its core, charges of financial abuse. Mary charged Cody and Robin with channeling joint family funds to finance their lifestyle at the expense of the other wives. From investments to real estate, Mary accused Cody of misusing his role as head of household to favor Robin and her children, starving Mary emotionally and financially. The lawsuit also covered the family's joint business ventures and television earnings. Mary claimed that she never was given a fair share and was systematically left out of important financial decisions for years. But Mary wasn't here to beg or plead verbally. She arrived with irrefutable evidence. When Mary's attorney came before the judge with a thick folder full of documents, the courtroom hummed in anticipation. Contained in it were texts, emails, bank statements, and deeds to properties, all showing a disturbing trend. Funds transferred from familial accounts into Robin's name only. Text messages documenting Cody shutting off Mary's efforts to talk about responsibilities shared. Emails laced with condescension and aggression when Mary asked questions about finances. Documents transferring property heavily slanted towards Robin, while all four wives have financially contributed over the years. With every incriminating piece of evidence being revealed, Cody's smug demeanor began to break. His grin wilted, his hands fluttered anxiously. Robin, initially composed, began whispering wildly in his ear, her face paling as reality was revealed. The courtroom erupted in gasps, whispers, and incredulity. The judge attentively flipped through the papers, visibly shaken by the documents pointing towards gross mismanagement of family resources. Friends and supporters of Mary exchanged shocked glances, while Cody's empire of control began to crumble right before everyone's eyes. Even a couple of the Brown family's former supporters nodded in agreement silently, while others gazed in disbelief. Could this possibly be the same family America had previously admired for its religious harmony and peaceful coexistence? That image had long disintegrated, but today it was being dismantled before their very eyes. The judge stopped, raising his eyes from the files to speak directly to Cody. Brown, why were these dealings done without signatures or input of all members of the family estate? Cody opened his mouth but spoke nothing at first. He glanced anxiously at Robin, who would not meet his eyes. I was attempting to make decisions that were in the best interest of the family, he mumbled. But the judge would not accept it. Which part of the family? He inquired acutely. Then followed Mary's soft power, a voice heard loud and clear. When her turn came, Mary did not shout, weep, or make personal insults. She spoke her truth in a calm and authoritative manner and let the facts speak for themselves. I gave decades of my life to this family. I was with them from the very start. I assisted in building our businesses. I assisted in bringing up the children. I sacrificed so much. I remained silent for a long time because I believed in what we were building together. But at some point, I was no longer part of the we. Her voice quivered a bit, but her words sliced deep. I wasn't just shoved aside. I was erased. The room fell silent. Even Cody looked shocked. Outside, the media circus was already in full swing. As a leak of the hearing spread, news trucks parked around the courthouse and former fans, critics, and viewers all amassed, attracted by the intrigue. Some were there to cheer for Mary, others simply to watch the family disintegrate on television. One thing was certain, this was no longer a family affair. It was now public, messy, and legal, and it promised to rewrite everything everyone believed they had known. Sister Wives producers were not permitted into the courtroom, according to sources. But backstage, negotiations were already in motion regarding including the aftermath on future specials or in-depth interviews. After all, reality television history was being created on the fly. Mary arrived armed. She did her homework, called on her courage, and commanded both the law and public opinion. Cody and Robin, on the other hand, held on to one another like lifelines. What had seemed to be a solid, united front earlier was now coming apart, kept intact by denial and desperation. When the judge finally adjourned the court, his face told it all. He had heard enough to realize this was not a run-of-the-mill family conflict. This was about a woman who had remained silent far too long, and now, at last, she was going to have her say. The verdict? Shocking, to say the least. The courtroom was not filled with murmurs, but shouting gasps. The instant Mary's attorney banged down that thick evidence binder on the table, the tone of the trial changed altogether. What had begun as a mundane family squabble burst forth into a full-fledged exposé. And Mary, serene and impassive, didn't have to gloat or smirk. The truth did the talking for her. This binder was not merely paper and documents. It had taken years to put together. From insiders, the painstakingly organized, color-coded, and tabbed file included receipts, computer printouts, contracts, and communications logs methodically gathered by Mary over time. For a woman who had been characterized on TV as meek, passive, even clingy, this revealed a breadth of strategy, accuracy, and determination that left everyone in the room agog. Mary hadn't entered court driven by emotion. She arrived armed with cold, hard facts. As her lawyer painstakingly walked the judge through the papers, cracks in Cody and Robin's facade emerged with each turn of the page. One of the initial disclosures was a breakdown of family earnings from television payments, book contracts, and public speaking. Under their spiritual and verbal understanding, all proceeds were to be split equally between spouses. But the truth was anything but even. Undefined, their financial records revealed that over 70% of. Amazingly, the documents showed more than 70% of the earnings from certain family business accounts were being sidetracked directly into Cody and Robin's own properties and businesses. Mary and the other wives were left fighting over whatever little was left. One explosive instance stood out. Almost $400,000 from a Sister Wives network settlement payment was said to have been diverted to buy Robin a luxurious home, all without Mary's knowledge. The judge's voice sliced through the courtroom. Did Mary receive notice of this transfer? The reply came back brightly, no. Mary had not seen it until she went searching through public property records. Cody's face turned crimson beneath the courtroom's scrutiny. Then there were emails, texts, and voicemails revealing a pattern of silence and exclusion. Mary's attorney introduced email exchanges in which Mary had asked repeatedly for news about family money, decisions, and property maintenance, only to be met with chilly, dismissive, or sometimes no replies at all. One text message was particularly egregious. Mary asked permission to take some of the joint family money to reinvest in her small business. Cody's response? A curt "Ask Robin." The courtroom shifted uneasily. It was obvious Robin was not only a legal wife. She had become the keeper of the family fortune, with Cody's blessing. And then there were the voicemails, Mary's voice cracking and almost breaking with emotion as she inquired why her name had been taken off a joint property deed. She never got a response. Mary's lawyer exposed the truth to the court. This was not a united family based on love and trust. While they functioned as a polygamous family in spirit, Robin alone was lawfully wedded to Cody. The remaining wives were left open to exploitation based on trust, a trust utterly destroyed. This is not emotional abandonment, Your Honor, the attorney contended. It's calculated exclusion masquerading as spiritual leadership. My client has been financially marginalized, emotionally isolated, and strategically excluded from all fundamental decisions regarding family resources. The courtroom's biggest drama wasn't the money revelations, it was Robin's meltdown. As Mary's testimony built, Robin burst into tears. Her shoulders heaved, tears flowing down her face, eyeliner smearing wildly. She rummaged in her purse for tissues, hastily wiping away her tears, then leaned in close to whisper something to Cody. Witnesses later reported that it sounded like, "You said everything was covered." At that point, the mood in the room changed again. Robin, years regarded by many as a helpless bystander caught in a circumstance she hadn't engendered, was now beset by the burden of years of silence, facilitating nepotism and phasing out uncomfortable realities. She put her hands over her face and attempted to exit, but was instructed to remain until the testimony was completed. Then arrived the critical moment for Cody's defense. How would he react? Cody testified on the stand, but the boastful, confident TV patriarch was gone. In his stead was a man who appeared cornered, indecisive, and oddly unprepared. "I never intended to hurt anyone," he said. "I attempted to lead the family in love. I never wanted Mary to feel left out." The courtroom was quiet, but the judge wasn't appeased. "How do you respond to keeping her name off these property deeds?" Cody faltered that was a legal issue, not personal. But Mary's attorney was prepared. He at once had a dated email string showing Cody actively scheming to strike Mary's name off to make things easier. So much for it not being personal. Outside the courthouse, the world saw what TLC had so carefully constructed. The Browns as a flawed but loving family, full of issues but intact. But within the courtroom, Mary's reality was coming to life, poised to destroy that image once and for all. Mary's tale was a reality that had been kept hidden for far too long. She had been marginalized out of money matters, belittled emotionally, and subtly manipulated behind the scenes, and all while being characterized nationally on television as unstable, needy, or hysterical. "I believed in our family," Mary said, her voice firm but laced with pain. But it was built on promises that were never kept. Before the session concluded, the judge seemed visibly shaken. He ordered a 15-minute recess so that he could read the documents in private. As he exited the bench, he hesitated, looked at Mary, and gave a discreet nod, a silent affirmation that her cause was not only persuasive but irrefutable. As the courtroom cleared, Mary quietly gathered her papers. No smile, no crying, only firm strength in each step she made. "I did tell the truth. The rest is beyond my control," her body silently conveyed. In the hallway, reporters shouted for a comment, but Mary moved on without uttering one word, the cameras photographing the fierce determination in her stride. Inside, sources later confirmed that Mary informed her attorneys the following: the receipts had been found. The pressure was getting to Robin. Cody's grip on the story was fraying, and the judge had witnessed it all. Mary Brown had changed from forgotten to unstoppable, and her truth was about to rewrite the Brown family's entire past. The tension in the courtroom was electric. Robin, seated behind Cody, shifted uncomfortably, her hands shaking a little as she glanced around the room, struggling to fix on anyone, not the judge, not the attorneys, not even her husband. The room was hushed, louder than any screaming would ever have been. Mary's testimony had broken the meticulously crafted illusion of togetherness, love, and shared culpability that Cody and Robin had offered for years. Then came the moment no one was ready for. The hearing started off calmly, with Cody's lawyer disputing Mary's testimony. But within less than 10 minutes, Robin's facade completely dissolved. She ceased eye contact, her cheeks flushing and her breathing accelerated. Then, in a courtroom full of witnesses and the assembled media, Robin burst into tears, a torrent of years of guilt, bewilderment, and fear all let loose simultaneously. She faced Cody and softly breathed through trembling lips. "This is not what we agreed on. You told me everything was okay. You told me this was over." Her voice boomed in the courtroom like thunder, causing gasps and whispers from the audience. The judge, visibly stunned, declared a brief recess to allow Robin to collect herself. But the harm was already done. Robin's breakdown showed something no attorney could. Even she hadn't anticipated the stark reality Mary had uncovered. Witnesses standing nearby sworn they heard Robin mutter the words, "You said this was taken care of." This wasn't panic, it was betrayal. Betrayal not just of Mary, but of the whole family and of Robin herself, as she realized she may have been no more than a pawn in Cody's master plan, or at least in complicity in something much more sinister than she could ever have dreamed. The judge observed with interest as Robin brushed away tears, fighting to regain her balance. Though not on the stand, her breakdown more eloquently testified than any words could. Then arrived the one moment everyone had been anticipating. Cody Brown was called to testify on the stand. The man who had ruled the TV screens for more than a decade, spearheading his multicultural family with authoritative orations, emotional manipulation, and self-proclaimed spiritual guidance, now looked worried, agitated, and utterly unready. He fidgeted with his tie, noticed Robin's tearful nod of support, then addressed Mary. The woman he had sworn an eternity to, his poise giving way. His first words were an empty apology. "I want to start by saying, I never meant to hurt anybody." Cody started off his defense with the words that sounded, remarkably enough, like they were about to come out of a script from the show. "We had our issues, but I've always attempted to guide our family with love." But this was no TLC cutting room. This was real life, and everything that was said here was on the record. "I did what I thought was right. Possibly it wasn't perfect, but I never left anyone behind," he continued. Mary's attorney listened attentively, allowing Cody to talk without pause, trusting that the inconsistencies would surface on their own. And then the cross-examination started. "Brown, how many family bank accounts are you managing?" the attorney asked. 3 or 4, said Cody. "And how many of those have Mary's name on them?" Cody paused. "ID have to check." The questioning intensified. "Is it correct that you took $175,000 out of a joint account to assist Robin in purchasing her Flagstaff home?" Another hesitation. "That was a family decision, but Mary wasn't privy to those conversations, was she?" "No, not in particular," Cody acknowledged. With each question, the attorney eroded the finely built facade Cody had built up over years. His responses were evasive, riddled with stutters and apologies regarding miscommunication, emotional distance, and spiritual choices, yet he never fully accepted responsibility. The judge was not impressed. Sighing, he leaned forward and asked flatly, "Mr. Brown, do you think your family model was equal in treatment, finances, and decision-making?" Cody's mouth opened to tell her yes, then closed again. After a moment of silence, he spoke in a whispered voice, "Not always." That one word hung there like a confession. Not always, just what Mary had been trying to establish all along. She had not been treated fairly, equally, or truthfully. Cody spoke one thing, but did another. His body betrayed his words. His eyes darted repeatedly toward Robin, hardly even acknowledging Mary. He drummed his foot under the table. His fists gripped the side of the witness stand, preparing for a collision. No matter how hard he tried to charm the courtroom, everyone saw through it. This was no longer about polygamy. This was about honesty, justice, and truth. And Cody's responses just didn't add up. Robin's silent breakdown, meanwhile, was devastating. Her face contorted from grief to shock as Cody stumbled through his defense. She didn't interrupt or weep again. She simply sat glued to her seat, a woman slowly realizing that she had been lied to, manipulated, or willfully ignorant. Courtroom drawings afterward showed Robin placing her hands over her face after Cody testified to making secret decisions. She did not stand up, she remained frozen and beaten. Outside, TLC and the public were responding hysterically. Social media blew up with hashtags such as #RobinBreaksDown, #CodyExposed, and hashtag Mary Wins Justice trending for hours. Even some reports alleged TLC producers outside looked frightened about how to frame this into upcoming Sister Wives episodes. This was no drama. It was destruction. Once golden family crumbling, all laid out in gruesome detail for the public to witness. Mary, on the other hand, was a rock. She did not smile when Cody faltered, did not gloat when Robin wept. She sat still, eyes straight ahead, hands on the table, but beneath it all, you sensed it. This was her moment of truth. Once the outsider within her own marriage, Mary was now in the spotlight, not seeking sympathy, but demonstrating strength by standing alone and telling the truth. The judge ordered a recess, obviously needing time to grapple with the emotional and legal significance of what he had just heard. Outside, media trucks swarmed, reporters speculating whether criminal charges might follow if financial misconduct was proven. Supporters and critics gathered on all sides, but everyone agreed on one thing. The Cody Brown America had watched for over a decade was gone. In his place stood a man who had just lost control of his image, his narrative, and possibly even his family. TLC Vibes audience, this was not an ordinary family disintegration. It was a public dismantling of manipulation, favoritism, and decades of emotional upheaval. The world was witnessing, and at long last, Mary was being heard. The wait was over. The judge stood, the robe billowing around him like the great weight of justice itself. The courtroom hushed as every breath was held and every gaze concentrated on the bench, waiting for the verdict. Would Mary finally have the justice she deserved? Or would Cody again turn the system around to suit himself? The judge adjusted his glasses, shuffled papers, and then fixed his eyes directly on Cody and his lawyers. Slowly, his eyes moved to Mary, steady, deliberate. When he finally spoke, his tone was placid but resolute. Having heard the testimonies, financial documents, personal declarations, and behavioral data submitted in this court decides in favor of Mary Brown. Gasps filled the courtroom. Robin put her hand over her mouth, as if she'd been punched in the chest and the wind had been knocked out of her lungs, tears welling up in her eyes immediately. She leaned on Cody, but he didn't hug her. His face was ghostly pale. The verdict slammed into him like a freight train. The judge brought on, Cody Brown, you are hereby directed to pay all unpaid financial obligations to Mary Brown, such as spousal maintenance, property division as mutually agreed, and payment of the $47,000 incurred without mutual consent. He paused, then added, this court also recognizes your background of emotional abandonment, financial intimidation, and multiple verbal and legal agreement breaches in this union. Robin's tears overflowed. No, this can't be happening, she whispered, shaking her head in denial. Meanwhile, Mary was calm, not smug or victorious, but peaceful, as if the storm at last was passing after all those long years of hurt. Her fingers relaxed the chair in front of her. For the first time in years, she wasn't holding her breath. Fans of TLC Vibes recognized that this moment was historic. As the judge explained enforcing the judgment, Robin suddenly outburst. Rising from her seat, tears and rage streamed down her face. You don't get it. He did everything for us, for this family. Court officers immediately moved in, quietly escorting her back to her seat. But the judge remained firm, commanding Mrs. Robin Brown, please exercise courtroom decorum. This ruling is final. You may be escorted out if you cannot remain respectful. Robin slumped back down, hiding her face in her hands. Outside, camera flashes recorded her meltdown, moments which would soon swamp social media with headlines such as Robin Brown breaks down as judge rules in favor of Mary. Cody glared at Robin, visibly irritated. This wasn't how things were supposed to go. He had always controlled his family, his narrative, and his women. But now his reputation was crumbling, exposed publicly, etched into court records for all to see. His posture slumped, arms crossed tightly. His lawyer leaned in to whisper something, but Cody stayed silent, jaw clenched, eyes narrowed as if grappling with the unthinkable. This wasn't simply a loss in the courtroom. It was a loss of control, power, and prestige, something Cody Brown was never used to losing. The judge then signed the final decree, stating, "This judgment shall take immediate effect. All divisions of assets shall be made within 60 days. Any efforts to delay or tamper with this order will lead to additional penalties." Boom. The gavel hit the wood with finality. It was official. Others claim Cody grumbled to himself something like, "She planned this all along." But the fact was, Mary had not plotted or schemed. She just stood up for herself, finally allowing the law to be heard when Cody would not listen. Subscribe to TLC Vibes for the full story. Outside the courthouse, there was a crowd. Sister Wives supporters, curious passers-by, and reporters were all waiting for a peek at the woman who had just beaten the man who once said he loved her, just to dump her like yesterday's garbage. When Mary appeared, she didn't preen, wave, or make a scene. She moved with subdued dignity, head held high, exuding calm confidence. She was flanked by her lawyer, her best friend Jen on the other side. Reporters yelled questions. "Mary, how do you feel now that you've won? Will you continue pursuing legal remedies? Do you think Robin will remain with Cody after this?" Mary provided few responses, but when posed the question, "What do you say to women terrified to end abusive relationships?" she hesitated, gazed straight into the camera, and stated with quiet authority, "Don't be afraid to choose yourself. It's not selfish. It's survival." Those words reverberated far outside the courtroom, repeated on YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram hundreds of thousands of times. Thousands of women replied, commenting, "This made me stronger. I needed to hear this." Mary Brown wasn't a character in a family melodrama, she was a warrior. Back at home, meanwhile, Robin sat quietly, mascara running down her face. She gazed at Cody, hoping for comfort, but received none. He rose slowly, shook hands formally with his attorney, and departed without even a glance over his shoulder. Robin finally heard something Mary had told her for years. Cody didn't love, he controlled. And when the control failed, so did his fidelity. Robin alone, wiping her tears and muttering, "What did we do?" Those words hung in the dying courtroom hush. Subscribe to TLC Vibes for coverage of the aftermath. The world at last heard the truth. Not the sanitized, scripted show presented on television. Not the perfect family history that had fooled so many. That was raw, uncontestable courtroom fact. Mary Brown stood not as a victim, but as a victor. Cody Brown, on the other hand, faced public humiliation, legal consequences, and a shattered reputation. The man who once held 4 women in his heart now stood alone, exposed before a court he believed he could control. Robin, once favored, now left broken. But Mary? She stepped into the light of freedom. Not just from the courtroom, but from a decade of emotional chains. Order in the court. The judge's voice rang out, stunning the courtroom into silence. Outside, camera flashes kept firing as reporters strained to capture the moment everyone had waited for. This was no ordinary verdict. It was the emotional climax of a decade-long saga between Mary Brown and Cody Brown, a conflict that tore apart not just a marriage, but an entire family. The judge put his glasses on the end of his nose and started to read. You could have heard a pin drop. Robin sat at Cody's back, white-faced and holding a crumpled tissue in her hand. Her red-rimmed eyes darted nervously from Mary to the judge. Mary sat upright, serene, and calm. But in those eyes smoldered the flames of a woman who had suffered for years at the hands of betrayal, humiliation, and abandonment, and finally announced she'd had enough. Cody Brown was a mere ghost of the man he used to be, fidgeting nervously with his tie. The swagger, the defiance, the man who used to attempt to write his own script were all gone. In front of the court, he was no longer the head of the family, simply a man who had to pay for his decisions. The judge breathed in. Having considered all testimony and evidence, and taking into account the financial and emotional strain suffered, this court holds. The room was absolutely silent. The judge's eyes grew stern as he spoke to Cody Brown. Having weighed the evidence of spousal financial support and emotional abandonment, he ruled resolutely. This court finds in favor of Mary Brown. There was a simultaneous gasp throughout the courtroom. Even the clerk sitting next to the judge flinched at the gravity of the moment. Robin instantly burst into tears, her crying filling the room. Mary? She didn't smile or sob. Rather, she closed her eyes and breathed deeply, a flash of complete serenity. At last, she was being appropriately heard and understood. The judge went on, Mr. Cody Brown, you're instructed to pay Mary Brown $750,000 for the emotional damages endured throughout your marriage, as well as her entire interest in the businesses and properties shared throughout your relationship. The room fell into another stunned gasp. But the decision didn't end there. This court also formally acknowledges the psychological damage inflicted by public humiliation, manipulation, and abandonment in a plural marriage without legal safeguards, the judge said. We are making a record of this as emotional abuse. This was not merely a monetary resolution, it was history. A legal milestone. A loud voice for women ensnared in spiritual or unconsummated plural marriages. A triumph not merely for Mary, but for thousands suffering in silence. Cody's mouth hung open. He gazed from judge to Mary, his eyes wide with incredulity. This is insane, he muttered. I cared for everyone. I gave them a place to live. I tried my best. The judge shifted forward in her chair, her voice calm and unshakable. Your best was not sufficient. Emotional neglect is abuse. Neglecting your partner for several years is abuse. Parental favoritism leading to financial and emotional devastation is abuse. Robin stood, clutching at being heard. You don't get it. Cody's under so much stress. We've all made sacrifices. The bailiff moved to quiet her, but the judge remained firm. Mrs. Brown, I understand your loyalty, but the decision is final. She slumped back into the chair, sobbing as she spoke in a half-whisper to Cody. How could this occur? Cody remained silent, his stare pinned on Mary, no longer the woman he used to dominate, but a woman he had seriously underestimated. The court adjourned, and reporters descended on Mary with a barrage of questions. How do you feel? Will this impact the show? What's next for the Brown family? Her voice firm and determined. I didn't come to seek revenge. I came to seek justice. This verdict is for all women who were told to remain silent. For all of you who have been pushed aside, today your voice counts. The audience erupted in applause. Robin and Cody exited through a side door, sidestepping reporters. The picture was powerful. The man once master of the narrative now running away from it. In minutes, #MaryWins and #CodyVerdict were trending globally. TikToks analyzing courtroom drama clogged timelines. YouTubers and rumor channels went wild with reaction. Twitter was abuzz with tweets stating, Karma finally caught up to Cody Brown and it's wearing heels named Mary. This was a victory for all women instructed to just deal with it. For all viewers sick of Robin playing the victim. Even die-hard Sister Wives watchers, long since disconnected, came back for this jaw-dropping drama. The verdict provided closure, and for Mary, a new beginning. Weeks later, Mary launched a new self-help podcast, Unbroken, My Voice, My Victory, featuring true tales of survival and healing. She was not surviving anymore. She was thriving. In the background, Cody was quiet. In private, TLC apparently debated the future of the show, weighing continuing on with a man the public had turned against, or switching gears to a redemption storyline for Mary. One thing was certain, Mary was no longer simply a chapter in Cody's narrative. She was writing her own. If you stand with Mary's victory, hit that like button. And don't forget to subscribe to TLC Vibes for the latest explosive updates on the Sister Wives saga. What do you think? Was justice all served, or is this just the beginning of the drama? Let me know in the comments.